Hello, and welcome everyone to Biology 315 Human Genetics. Let me first introduce myself. I'm Dr. Steve Gorsuch. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Biology at Central Michigan University. Now, I may not be the one teaching your course, the particular semester you're in, but I am the one who developed the course. The 21st century is a fascinating time to be studying genetics. The advances in this field have come such a long way that today we are investigating questions that we thought were impossible to investigate just a few decades ago. We now have the ability to rapidly sequence whole genomes from bacteria to humans. This has allowed us to identify genes that function in various diseases, in human development, and genes that help explain our evolution. Our ability to understand diseases at the genetic and molecular level is leading to some exciting new treatments and possibly some new cures. These discoveries are having incredible social, medical, economical, and political impacts in all of our lives. This course is designed to give students a solid understanding and deep appreciation for this fast-moving field, and a deeper understanding of the potential impacts genetics has on our society. Thus, it is an exciting time to study genetics. Now, of course, the overall objectives of this course are to explore human genetics. This will include an overall understanding of genes, that is, where they're located, how they're copied, how they themselves are responsible for all the many traits we see in each of us. We'll also learn about how these genes get passed on from one generation to the next, and helps explain not only the commonalities we see in human populations, but what accounts for those small differences that we see in any given population. As you'll learn, any two human beings on this planet are greater than 99% the same at the genetic level. Now let's talk a little bit about the course. As is true with most online courses, the student learner has a little bit more flexibility than they might see in a face-to-face course. However, in an online course, the student learner also has to take on more responsibility for their learning. Thus, you need to be a more disciplined learner in an online class. Now, when I teach a face-to-face class, I like to reinforce the importance of working in teams and the importance of learning communication skills. In fact, we know that your future employers or the admission offices of various health programs or other programs that you may apply to in the future, they're not just looking for good GPAs. They're looking for evidence that you have strong leadership skills, strong communication skills, strong teamwork skills, strong problem-solving skills, and the overall ability to be a lifelong learner. With this in mind, the motivation for the format of this course is not to only help you learn the concepts of genetics, but also to help you further develop these other career skills in leadership, in teamwork, in communication, and in problem solving. The framework that I will use in our learning environment, that is the online classroom, is a method called TeamBased Learning. This is a proven method for advanced learning. And from my experiences with using this method for the past several years, is that students learn more, they do better on exams, and when I have to write a letter of recommendation for them in the future, I can say specific things about their ability to work in a team, their ability to lead, their ability to communicate. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably new to team-based learning, so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the various features of it and how we're going to implement it in this online course. The first critical part of team-based learning is that students have to come prepared. Now, for an online course, this is a natural fit because with online courses, students have to prepare on their own without coming to a traditional classroom. However, I'm not going to just give you a textbook and say, read this textbook and you should be able to pull everything out of that textbook that you need to know. I do think the textbook you will use this semester is a good textbook, and it's, for the most part, pretty user-friendly. It's pretty readable. However, it's always a challenge, I feel, when you're learning new material to read a textbook and pull out exactly what it is that the instructor wants you to know. So to help you with that, while you're reading the textbook, I'm going to provide two additional tools. The first will be the study guides, and then the second will be video podcasts that I provide. I'll show you in a moment where the study guides are, and the best way to use them in this course. I will also show you where to find the video podcast for each week. Now, I'd recommend going through these on your own before you take the second part of team-based learning. And the second part of team-based learning is an individual quiz. You'll take this in a system that I'll talk about in a little bit called NT Dashboard. This individual quiz is to assess if you understand the basics of that chapter. Now, there will be several questions on this quiz, and each question will be worth 4 points. As you see when you take these quizzes, if you're confident in the answer, you can put all 4 points on one choice. However, if you're looking at the various choices and you're not sure between, say, A and B, you could put 2 points on A and 2 points on B. If you're completely guessing, you have the option of spreading those 4 points out amongst all the options. Thereby, you're sure that you get some of the points for those questions that you're a little more confused on than the other questions. I do allow you to use notes for these individual quizzes. However, the quizzes are timed, so you won't have time to look up every answer for each question. So you're going to have to come prepared for these individual quizzes. These quizzes have to be done before you meet as a team and take the team quiz, which is the next part of it. So each of these individual quizzes will need to be completed by the end of Wednesday. So you will need to make sure that you plan the first 3 days of the week carefully so you have enough time to prepare and take this quiz. Now, the third part of team-based learning is to take a team quiz. And I'll talk in a moment about how we develop the teams. The team quizzes will also be taken using the system called NT Dashboard, which I'll get to in a moment. You'll have a new set of questions that you'll take as a team. They'll be similar to the ones you took in the individual quiz, but slightly different. Now, the feature of the team quiz is that each question is worth 2 points. Now, if your team gets it correct on the first attempt, each member of the team will get 2 full points. However, it does give you a chance to go back and re-answer questions that you get wrong. So if it takes you 2 tries to answer the question, you will get half of the available points. If it takes you 3 tries, you'll get a quarter of the available points. If it takes you 4 or more tries, you won't get any of the points. But this way, as a team, if you're not sure on an answer, you can always make the best logical guess. And if you're right, you'll get the points. But if you're not, you'll get a second chance. Now, after the team quiz, that's when we'll move on, in your teams that is, to some application activities. These are designed to be more complicated questions. These are designed to be the kinds of questions you might find on an exam. Now, you might find questions similar to the individual and team, but really these application activities, these are the more advanced problems, and they're going to be more indicative of what you might find on an actual exam. Again, you'll work on these in your team. There will be several questions that you have to work on that cover the material that you learned on your own to begin with, and then were assessed over using the individual and team quizzes, and now you're applying it into a more advanced problem set. Now, in order for this to work, we have to make sure we develop diverse teams. And how I'm going to do that is there will be a survey sent out to you. In fact, you may have already received that email, and maybe you've even taken the survey. I'll use the information in that survey to best fit each student into a team of 3 or 4 students. One of the criteria to making a team will be I will pick times that all 3 or 4 of you say you're available. So make sure that you indicate correctly the times that you're available, and be flexible as well. That will make forming the teams easier. Another tool that we can use to help the team-based learning experience is to use the student peer evaluations. I'll explain this as we get closer to our first evaluation, but these are designed to help the team work better. When I teach face-to-face classes and I use team-based learning, the students are all in the same classroom and they're all sitting at the same tables. So it makes that aspect of the team quizzes and application questions a little more straightforward. However, with an online class, we're going to have to look at more of a virtual approach. And we're going to take advantage of these 2 tools on the bottom here. On the right here is WebEx. Now this is one of the telecommunication tools we have available. Using WebEx, the team will be able to meet and see each other and talk to each other so that you will be able to take these team quizzes and application activities. This is a very important skill to develop as well. Many of us in our professional worlds can't travel to long distance places to meet with people. And so on a regular basis, even in my field, I will use various telecommunication activities. And for you to gain that experience in this class will be of benefit to you as you move forward. Now, we'll also use something called NT Dashboard. This is a system that you'll have to purchase separately, but it will allow us to take the individual and team quizzes using the features I talked about. So this is the framework of team-based learning. What I'd like to do now is move to Blackboard so I can show you how you can access the various tools available to you. Most of you probably have already found the Blackboard page, and that's how you're watching this video. But let's go over some of the content of it right now. Here is the link to the pre-course survey that I will use to help form teams, so make sure you take that soon. Over here I have the link for the syllabus and some other course information. But the most important thing here is the electronic version of the syllabus that you can click on and store on your computer somewhere so you have easy access to it. There are a few discussion boards. Now, this particular online course is not discussion board heavy. We don't do a lot on discussion boards on a weekly basis. However, for the first week, I will want you to post to this, get to know each other. If you do this, you will get a bonus point on the midterm exam. So go ahead and do that. Just say a couple things about you, where you're from, what your major is, maybe what a few things you're interested in, and so forth. There's also this question and answer. So if you're ever stumbled, you can post a question here, and then either myself or a classmate will respond to it. The other thing you should take note of is this discussion board post here. This is where you'll post your infographic topic for approval. This has to be done in order to get full credit for it. It has to be done by Friday of week 1. Next, let's look at these 4 folders right here. Course material by week. This is probably the most important folder as you're getting prepared for the material for any given week. We can see we have a pre-course work. So this is the week before classes start. There are a few things that you should do here. Week 1, week 2, and then all the way down to week 8. Let's just open up one of these folders. We'll start with week 1. Makes sense. And in week 1, you'll see a list of learning objectives for the chapters that we're covering in week 1. We'll also see a list of weekly tasks, different things that you are responsible for doing that week. You'll also see study guides, one for each of the chapters covered during that week. For week 1, there are 3 chapters. Seems like a lot, but some of the chapters we won't cover all of the material in. And then in this folder, and I'll open this up in a moment, this is where you find all the video podcasts to help you learn the material for that week. So let's just pick one of these to look at, and I'm going to look at chapter 2 study guide. And what you'll see here is what a typical study guide for any given chapter will look like. Up here is a brief description of the format of the study guide. You can read that. Certainly don't need to read it every week because it's the same for each chapter. But the way they're set up is that there will be several objectives. Objective 1, Objective 2, Objective 3, 4 for this particular chapter. Each one of these objectives, say in this case cell division and cell death, will have key points listed here, or key concepts. Next to that are the questions or the things you need to know about that concept. So cell cycle, draw the cell cycle including interphase and M phase. Show a chromosome pair going through the cell cycle. Now what I would recommend doing for this question is to write out a description of this, of what the interphase is, what M phase is, what happens in each of these cycles. Now this is in the textbook, but you'll also find it on the video podcasts. Often in the video podcasts, I've seen students take screenshots of particular images and paste them right into this study guide. Alternatively, if you would like, you could also just write all this out by hand, print it off and write it off, or just on a piece of notebook paper, you can write this out. Each student's different in how they like to manage their notes. I like putting it all digitally because my handwriting isn't the best, and it's searchable. If I need to find a phrase or a term, it's easy to find without searching through my poor handwriting. Now, as you're going through this, there may come a point where after watching the podcast, after reading the textbook, something still is not clear. What I would recommend doing then is writing the question right over here. So maybe after watching the podcast and looking through the textbook, you're still struggling on what the 3 cell cycle checkpoints are. So maybe over here you're going to write, I'm still confused about the 3 checkpoints of the cell cycle. And once you've done that, then you can talk to your team. You can ask them about this question, or you can shoot me an email. But this keeps it clear that this is a concept that you were struggling on. So when you go back to study, maybe this is a part where you will focus a little bit more on. Next, let's look at the podcasts. And let's go ahead and pull up the cell cycle, apoptosis, and stem cells, since that's the study guide we looked at. Now, what I recommend as you're watching the podcasts, to have a piece of paper out and draw what I draw, take notes on what I write, and also take notes on the things I say that I don't necessarily write. By taking very thorough notes of the video podcasts, you'll be well prepared for that week's material. Each of the video podcasts are set up in a very similar format. Now, sometimes there will be slightly different styles I'll use depending on how old that particular podcast is. But in general, what you'll see is a whiteboard with me drawing out concepts or writing out written explanations. One thing a lot of students have told me that they've done that is really helpful is that they will go through the podcast and take notes thoroughly throughout the podcast, and then they'll pull up the study guide and they'll see if they can answer these questions. So after watching the podcast, could you draw the cell cycle? Do you understand what the 3 cell cycle checkpoints are? Do you know the purpose of mitosis? If you can answer these questions after watching the podcast, then you can be pretty confident that you understand this material pretty well, at least at that basic level. Until now, the last tab I want to talk about is an individual assignment that you're responsible for. Now, we do a lot of things within our teams in this class. However, some things you won't do it as a team. For instance, your exams will not be in teams. This infographic assignment will also not be as a team. This is an individual assignment, and I think you will get a lot out of it. You'll pick a disease or some trait that you're interested in learning more about, and you'll build an infographic. In the instructions here, I talk about what infographics are and why they're important. You can also look up online, find some examples of infographics. However, I have provided 2 examples here that you can look at. And as you're building the infographic, I do have a suggested web tool to use to help build it in a very professional way. Make sure you pull up this rubric here. The rubric will tell you what I'm looking for, how to get maximal points for that assignment. Well, that's all I have for this welcoming podcast for you. I'm looking forward to the start of class and the opportunity to help you learn genetics and to get to know you throughout the semester. If you have any questions at all as we begin the semester or throughout the semester, please do contact me, and I'll do my best to help answer your questions and to alleviate any concerns you might have. Well, bye for now until I see you in the next podcast.